Welcome to the broadcast. Have you ever had one of those relationships that left a bad taste in your mouth? Why is that? What happened? Well, I think that can boil down to one thing, is that you weren't treated right in the relationship. And, good relationships are based on mutuality. So in other words, I treat you right and you treat me right. But not always are you going to be treated right in relationships, and that's why you need boundaries. And that's what we want to talk about in this particular broadcast. We want to talk about what boundaries are and some of the value that you get from using those in your relationships. And as we go along, we'll be talking about how to set boundaries and what to do when people bust your boundaries. So let's go ahead and we'll talk about boundaries themselves and understanding them a little bit better. Boundaries, when you really stop and think about it, are key to building healthy relationships. And but it's important for us in order to incorporate these into our lives, is to figure out what they are in the first place. And here's a good description of what a boundary is, and we're going to explore this a little bit more as we go along. But a boundary is a limit that you set to protect your personal space, feelings, and needs. It helps define what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior, ensuring that the other person respects your comfort and well-being. That's kind of a mouthful. and I always like to keep things a little bit simpler for myself when I'm thinking about these types of issues. And here's one good way to think about a boundary, is to remember this, is that you get what you tolerate in relationships. And I've said that over and over, and I'll continue to say it because it's an important concept when it comes to relationships. You get what you tolerate. If you tolerate abuse, you get abuse. If you tolerate disrespect, you get disrespect. If you tolerate alcohol abuse from your partner, or drug abuse from your partner, porn use from your partner, you're going to get that in your relationship. You get what you tolerate. And so that's important because, in my life, is that I want to be treated right, and I want to be treated with respect, and I want to be treated with kindness, and so I need to think about what is it that I'm going to tolerate in my relationships. I learned this really quick when I was raising my kids, and then they're all adults now, and fine adults, I might add. But I discovered that you get, and nowadays there's kind of this, oftentimes this free range parenting. We just let kids run wild and do whatever they want to, and figure it out for themselves. But that's why I'm the adult. That's why God gives adults to parents to children, at least theoretically, is to help guide them in the path. And I found out really early on is that with my kids, is that you get what you tolerate. If you tolerate disrespect, you're going to get disrespect from them. If you tolerate defiance, you're going to get that. And so it's my job as the parent to make sure that I set boundaries in a fair way, not in a punitive way, but certainly in a fair way. And that's what we want to consider. So you get what you tolerate. And that let's talk a little bit about why we set boundaries in the first place. And we set boundaries. There are some good reasons to set boundaries. One is self-protection. In other words, is that boundaries help shield you from emotional, physical, and psychological harm. And really, when you stop and think about a boundary, is that one of the key concepts is that this is not really your effort to control the other person. This is really your practice as to what you're going to let into your own life. And so it's really about self-protection and also considering the health of the relationship. There's a good passage of scripture that we should consider, and it says this. It says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. And so it's important to take care. Self-care is really an important biblical practice, and we see it right here in Proverbs 4:23, is that we are to guard our hearts and to make sure that that the very essence of our being is protected from those factors that would undermine our well-being. And so that's what a boundary is that one of the good reasons why we have them is for self-protection. Another good reason why we have boundaries is to promote respect. And that boundaries encourage respect from others and promote healthier interactions. And I've seen this so many times, and that's also, with respect to raising kids. But it's not just raising kids that we're talking about here. We're also talking about in marriage or marriage relationships or friendships or whatever. Is that that the person with a highly defined sense of self and good boundaries will have better interactions with people, and that's just the way it goes. And so we need to give consideration to these reasons why we have boundaries. Another reason that we have boundaries is that, we got out of sync there, is that it enhances communication. And good boundaries can help us in our communication by clarifying what is acceptable and expected. And so in our communication with each other, and I always talk to people whenever I'm coaching clients, is that we need to, when there is an issue in a relationship, we need to show up and speak up. And that seems like such a such a basic concept, but a lot of times, some people have no problem speaking up, but others have problems showing up and speaking up and doing it in a way that is going to promote the welfare of the relationship. And so boundaries can go a long way to help us with our communication. Is that boundaries also, when it comes to these issues, is that they help us to prevent feelings of resentment that arise from unfulfilled needs or expectations. I have found that the best policy in life is to deal with resentments when they are micro resentments. In other words, and because micro resentments, what they do is that they're like barnacles, is that they begin to collect in our soul, and that pretty soon it's going to impede the welfare of our relationships. And what we need to make sure is that we manage those resentments as they come up. And one of the ways that we can do that is through healthy boundaries that are communicated well. So, and then finally, with some of the good reasons that we promote boundaries, is that they help encourage accountability. So they hold others to be accountable for their performance on their side of the relationship. So that's some of the good reasons why we practice boundaries. Let's move on here, and we'll wrap this up. One of the things that I think that we need to remember is that boundaries are a good thing, that they are not a bad thing, that boundaries are meant to serve health, both your health, the health of your relationship, and also the health of your loved one. And that's why we do it. And I was thinking about this, is that because boundaries a lot of times, and particularly if your relationship has kind of like gone, if you've neglected important aspects of your relationship for a while, is that when you try to enact boundaries, it's going to feel a lot like control. Let's think a little bit about that, the difference between boundaries and control. And boundaries are about self-care and maintaining a healthy dynamic in your relationships. So think clearly about guarding your own heart, protecting yourself in the relationships and clearing out those little micro resentments and things of that nature. But when it comes to control, unhealthy attempts to control another person often involve manipulation and coercion, or imposing your will on them. And it may be hard to detect, and particularly if your relationship is caught in an unhealthy dynamic, it may be hard to detect the difference between boundaries and control. And you might even have problems with setting appropriate boundaries. But boundaries are about personal responsibility, while control is about exerting power over someone else. And sometimes when it comes to setting boundaries, you need a fair-minded referee. Because, if you're caught in that type of relationship where there's a lot of hostility or even a lot of distrust, is that you're going to need somebody who is a fair-minded referee to help you work through these matters of your relationship. And so I would encourage you to begin to practice boundaries in your own life, in your own family, with your kids, and also in your marriage, and also deal with the problems in your home, in your personal life, while they're small, rather than waiting for them to become big issues. Next time, we're going to be talking a little bit about when to set boundaries and 6 occasions when boundaries make sense. And also, I want to remind you to check out our private Facebook group. You might want to join that. We're on Facebook. It's a private group where we post all of our content, additional content than this, at beyondbetrayal.org. That's where you'll find it on Facebook, at beyondbetrayal.org. Hey, thanks for watching, and I hope that you'll join me next time when I share a little bit more about boundaries. That's it for now. Bye-bye.